Hello and welcome back. For last few lectures, we have been discussing about this topic of radiographic technique, and in previous lectures we have covered almost all the aspects related to radiographic testing as a NDT method. And so far whatever we have seen, it was about conventional radiography, which employs radiographic films to capture the X-ray image. Okay? And in that case, there are some limitations of this technique, particularly with regard to the X-ray film. First of all, you need this film which has to be handled carefully. You can never expose it to light. So, first of all, you need a sample holder which can protect it from exposure to light before you load it to the X-ray machine. That is one thing. Secondly, when you expose it, after the exposure you need to develop the film. Okay? So, that again involves a lot of skills and certain consumables, and if you are not careful enough in developing the film, whatever you have done before while capturing the image can go wrong. Okay? So, that is the second limitation. And the third one is about the storage of these X-ray images once you have them developed on the film. Okay? Because this is based upon some silver halide emulsions, as we have talked about, and this kind of films you cannot store them for long time. Okay? So, that is the problem about the storage. If you want to store them for long time, there are difficulties. So, if you want to go back to any data and pull out an old image, that is difficult to do in this case. So, due to this difficulty in storage, you have to do the analysis then and there, okay, immediately after you capture the image and develop it. You cannot really store it and then come back later on to do the analysis. So, that is the third limitation that this conventional radiography has. Okay. So, therefore, in order to overcome these difficulties or the limitations associated with conventional radiography, we have to think of something which can eliminate all these difficulties. Okay. So, that is how this digital radiography came into being, which does not really need X-ray films to capture the image. Okay. So, what is done in that case, in case of digital radiography, is that you when you expose the sample and the X-ray intensities which are coming out from the samples are captured by a detector which can convert these X-rays into an electrical signal. Okay. So, that is what we are going to talk about today as to how digital radiography is done, and what is the mechanism through which digital radiography operates, and then we will see what kind of detector is used to perform digital radiography. Okay. So, this will be the topic for today's lecture. Yeah. So, as I said, in order to do this digitally, you need a detector which will capture the X-rays and convert them into an electrical signal, which can finally be converted into a digital signal, and then you have the digital image. Okay. And these kind of detectors come in the shape of a flat plate or a flat panel, and that is why they are known as flat panel detector, as you could see over here. Okay. So, this is the diagram of a flat panel detector or FPD, which is used for capturing the radiographic image. Okay. So, this is going to replace the film and whatever you do on the film. Okay. So, all you need in this case for exposure is this flat panel detector, which will capture the image digitally, and it can be then transferred to a computer and can be stored, and then you can do the analysis as and when you want. Okay. And if you remember, we talked about the conversion of X-rays into light photons when we discussed about the intensifying screens. Okay. So, there we talked about an intensifying screen based upon this phosphor or these fluorescent salts, which can convert X-rays falling on them into either electrons or visible light photons. Okay. So, the origin of digital radiography is from this kind of intensifying screens which can convert falling X-ray intensities into an electrical signal or a visible light photon. Okay. So, this FPD there are two forms, it comes in two different forms. One uses this kind of phosphor plates which is primarily made of a phosphor material like barium fluorohalide, which is activated by a rare earth element like europium. Okay. So, this europium is added into this barium fluorohalide phosphor in order to generate the electrons when the X-ray intensity fall on this phosphor plate. So, the way this works is when you add this europium, what happens is this europium will be in 2+ state, okay, in this phosphor material. Now, when it is exposed to incoming X-ray intensity, these X-rays will interact with these europium ions and they will eject electrons from this europium. And as a result of this, when an electron is ejected from this europium 2+, it will become 3+. So, it will be kind of transferred into a high energy state, okay, from the ground state, and the ejected electrons will be trapped in the band gap, okay, and the number of such electrons will be proportional to the X-ray intensity which is falling on the material. Okay. So, now that is how the latent image is formed by ejection of electrons from this europium ions, and these electrons will be trapped in the band gap. Okay. So, that is the latent image. Now, if you want to activate this latent image and from the actual image, these trapped electrons have to be released further back into the europium ions, okay, so that it can come back to the ground state, and the energy difference between the higher energy state and the ground state, that will be then released as light. Okay. So, in that fashion the X-ray intensities will be converted into light photons. Okay. So, that is what happens when you after the exposure, when the latent image is formed, this has to be excited by some low energy electromagnetic radiation like laser. Okay. So, this kind of radiation like laser, they just have enough energy to to excite these electrons which are trapped back into the europium. Okay. So, when you do that, as I told, this europium which was in high energy state due to that ionization when it was exposed to X-rays, this high energy state will come back to ground state. That means, europium 3+ will again come back to europium 2+. So, this energy difference that you have when it comes back to ground state from higher energy state, that will be released as light emission, and in this case the light which is emitted, it will be in the wavelength range which is close to blue. So, this will emit blue light. So, this kind of phosphor which is composed of barium fluorohalide activated with europium are blue emitting phosphors. Okay. So, now you can use these light photons which are emitted by the phosphor and convert them into an electrical signal. For example, you can use a photomultiplier, right, which will convert these light photons into an analog electrical signal, and that analog signal or the analog image can be further converted into a digital output using an analog to digital converter. Okay. So, that is how this whole thing works. First you convert the X-rays into light photons with the help of these light centers provided by the europium, and then you convert these light photons into an analog signal, which is further converted to a digital signal, and that is how the digital image is formed. Okay. So, this is one type of FPD which is based upon a phosphor plate and which requires excitation by laser once the exposure is over. Okay. So, this is kind of a two-step process wherein you first take this FPD and expose the sample over it, and after the exposure this has to be again exposed to laser, and a unit which will first expose it to laser and then convert this blue light which is coming out into electrical signal. Okay. So, that unit will have both. It has the ability to first expose this to laser and then convert the light into electrical signal and further into a digital signal. Okay. Now, if you want to minimize the number of steps, okay, so in that case these X-rays have to be directly converted into a light photon or into an electrical signal. Okay. So, that is another type of FPD that you have which can do that, which will convert the incoming X-ray intensities directly into an electrical signal with the help of a scintillator layer which first converts these X-ray intensities into light photons, and these light photons are further converted into an electrical signal with the help of a semiconductor layer just below the scintillator layer. Okay. So, this is all within the same unit. Okay. Before this X-ray intensities is converted into an electrical signal, it is first converted into light photons, and for that the top layer of this FPD is coated with a scintillator layer made of a material like cesium iodide. Okay. So, this kind of material, this cesium iodide kind of materials have the ability to absorb X-ray radiation and then release light photons, and once these light photons are released, they will be sent to the photodiode layer, the photodiode transistor layer which is just below the scintillator layer, and these photons will be now converted into electrical signal. Okay. So, this is the scheme how it works, this scintillator based FPDs. So, the X-rays first come and fall on this cesium iodide scintillator layer, which will absorb the X-ray photons and convert them to light photons. Okay. And this will be channeled into the photodiode array which is just kept below the scintillator layer. Okay. So, this photodiode transistor layer is made of low noise photodiode arrays which will absorb the light photons and convert them into an electrical charge, and each of these photodiode represents a pixel. So, this photodiode, as I am going to show you in the next slide, are made in the form of a grid or a form of some network. Okay. Instead of a single piece, it is divided into small rectangular grid, and each of these arrays or each of these rectangular grids will represent a pixel. Okay. And the amount of light intensity falling on each of these pixel will be proportional to the X-ray intensity which is falling on that particular part. Okay. So, once these light photons are converted into an electronic charge, that will be stored through some capacitors which are built into this photodiode layer, and finally it will be read out by the readout electronics which is part of this detector, which will convert this analog electrical signal into a digital signal through which this digital image will be formed. Okay. Yeah, so that is how the charge at each pixel is read out by low noise electronics, which is part of the detector, and turned into digital data, which will be sent into the image processor to finally form the digital image. Okay. So, this is how it works, which is shown here schematically. And if you now see the construction of this scintillator based flat panel detectors, this is how it is. As I said, the top layer is made of a cesium iodide scintillator layer, which will convert the incoming X-ray intensity into light photons, and just below this you have this amorphous silicon TFT layer, the transistor layer, which will capture those light photons, which will absorb those light photons and convert them into electronic charge. Okay. And as I said, this is divided into this kind of network or arrays, like this kind of rectangular grids. So, each of these array will represent a pixel in the final digital image. Okay. And on this you have these inbuilt capacitors also, which will first store the charge. Okay. So, the light from the phosphor first falls on the photodiode, which creates the charges proportional to the light intensity, and the charge will be now deposited on the signal storage capacitors which are connected to these TFT arrays. Okay. So, this is how the construction of the TFTs are in terms of these small rectangular grids or arrays. So, you have these rows and you have these columns. Okay. So, this row of TFTs which represent the pixels are known as gate, and these columns that you have, these are known as data or data line, which is also called drain line. Okay. So, what happens when you do the X-ray exposures, these TFTs will be in off mode. So, that is when the charge will be stored into these capacitors, and after the exposure a positive bias is provided to these gates or to these TFTs to release the charge. Okay. So, first you expose and then store the charge, and afterwards when you finally want to send this signal into the image processor, you need to excite these TFTs with a small positive bias, which will release the charge, and that charge will be transferred through these columns or data lines. Okay. So, this is why they are known as drain lines, because they will drain out the charge which is stored. Okay. And this transferring of the charge through the data lines happens gate by gate. So, first you do for gate 1, transfer the charge through the data line, and then gate 2, gate 3 and so on. Okay. So, this is how finally the charge will be transferred gate by gate through these data lines or drain lines, which will finally be sent to the electronics and the image processing unit, which will convert this electrical analog signal into a digital signal to form the digital image. Okay. So, this is how the flat panel detectors work to capture digital images from X-ray exposures. And since you have a compact detector now, the whole setup also becomes quite compact compared to conventional radiography setup, which will generally have a large footprint compared to this digital radiography setup. Okay. So, these flat panel detectors, they come in different sizes depending on the size of the part or the size of the sample which is being imaged. You might have seen this in nowadays it is used in medical radiography also, and you might have seen this kind of detectors which will be kept in close contact of our body, and then after the exposure it is transferred to a unit which will expose this either to laser, or it will convert that electrical signal into a digital image. Okay. So, depending on the size of the area that is to be imaged, the size of this flat panel detector can be varied, and they are available in different sizes, starting from the size of a small A4 sheet, from that kind of size to a bigger size, depending on the area that you want to expose. Okay. And this is how the whole setup is looks like, which is shown here through this diagram. So, all you need is a small X-ray tube, an X-ray source which is here, okay. And this is the sample which is exposed, and this is the flat panel detector which is behind the sample. Okay. This source also nowadays is quite compact. These flat panel detectors, as I said, comes with a compact size, and therefore, the whole setup in terms of the footprint is quite compact and much smaller compared to conventional radiographic setup. In fact, if you could provide a exposure vault or exposure chamber which will shield the radiation, this can also be taken to a site, and you can do radiography on site. Okay. So, on site radiography can also be done with the help of that, provided you have radiation shielding when you are doing the exposure. So, this is the other advantage, apart from eliminating all those limitations that conventional radiography has. The other advantage that you have in this case, that this is a very compact setup, and it is possible to do on site radiographic examinations with the help of this, which was not possible in case of conventional radiography, because that is a fixed setup which has to be kept inside a room. So, now that we have been talking about digital radiography, an offshoot of this has given rise to a very useful technique which is very useful particularly for medical radiography in cases where you have to pinpoint the damage or the defect. For example, if you have some damage in the brain, in that case, unless you pinpoint the damage, it is difficult to address it medically, because in a brain it is a very sensitive area. You cannot play around and then try and figure out where exactly is the damage. Okay. So, in those kind of cases where you need to image it precisely to pinpoint the damage, this technique comes very handy, very useful, which is known as computed tomography. You all might have heard about it in the short form, which is known as CT scan. Okay. So, that CT stands for computed tomography, and this is again a digital radiography setup, but done in a different way, so that you can capture the image in a manner which will finally provide you a 3D image, because as I said, you need to exactly pinpoint the damage and see its true image as to how big it is and how far it has spread and all that, okay, in order to address it medically and treat it. Okay. There could be cases in industrial or engineering components also, where you need to image it in terms of a 3D image, so that you can actually see what is there inside. You can see the actual image of the part, and if there is any features or any defect or flaws that you are looking for, you can form a 3D image and see how they are actually inside the part. Okay. So far whatever we have seen all are actually a 2D profile of the part. In fact, it is a shadow of the part in which you see a 2D profile of the defects. Okay. But in this case when you do computed tomography, the image has to be a 3D image. Okay. So, in order to do that, the image has to be captured in different planes first, as if you are slicing the sample across different planes, and then you capture images across as many planes as possible. Okay. So, that is how this name has come, because this tomography has two parts. If you break it down, first one is tomos, which means slice, and the second one graphy or graphene is to write or to capture. Okay. So, as I said, first you need to capture the image across different planes of the component, as if you are slicing it, okay, across different planes. That is how this tomo comes into this nomenclature. and then you capture it or write it. So, that is to graphene. So, that is how put together it is called as tomography. Okay. Now, when you finally take all these images together, the images that you have captured across different slices or different planes. So, what you have done basically you have collected the density data, the photographic density data across different planes and different layers of the sample. And now finally, if you can put this density data together, okay, and reconstruct, then you can get the 3D image of the whole part. Okay. So, that is the whole idea behind this. First you capture the 2D images across different slices or different planes, and then this density data finally you have to reconstruct and put them together to create the 3D image. And in order to do that, you need a sample holder which can manipulate the sample and can image it in across different angles and different planes. Okay. So, you need a 5-axis manipulator as the sample holder in this case, so that the samples can be moved around and rotated into different angles, and you can capture the image across different planes throughout the sample. Okay, so, this is what you have in this case, a computer controlled turntable or the manipulator which will hold the sample, and then it is exposed to X-rays, and then you have the detectors like those kind of flat panel detector which can convert these X-ray intensities into a digital image. So, first you have the analog signal through the detector which is kept behind the sample, and the sample is rotated at different angles, and this analog data is sent to the processing unit which will convert it into a digital data, and the digital image can be stored in a computer or can be seen in the computer screen. Okay. But in CT scan our sample is the human head, right, because most of the time CT scan is useful for brain related damage, or if you want to image the brain. So, in that case the sample is either the human body part or the human head, and in that case you cannot rotate it, you cannot rotate the sample, right, but you have to capture the image across different planes. So, that rotational motion is needed. Since you cannot rotate the sample in that case, the source itself is rotated. Okay. So, that is what you might have seen, that the chamber in which the image is captured, it has a rotatable unit. So, through that rotation the image of the brain or any other body part is captured across different planes and layers. Okay. And finally, these 2D images captured along the different planes will be put together through some kind of algorithm and the electronics that you have in the system, and they will create the 3D image for the end user to see. So, this is how digital radiography and computer tomography works, and with this we come to the end of this lecture also. So, I am going to stop here today, and I will see you next time with another lecture on this particular topic. Thank you for your attention.